Good evening and welcome back to Prime of Midlife. It's Friday night, it's the start of the weekend, and this evening we are talking about a few different things. We have food prices, we have children, and we have housing. And food prices, if you saw last night's video, you can see, how are we trying to shop more cheaply or for less costs. And it seems, funnily enough, both these headlines came out on the same day. One was that the UK government, one of their groups, the Economic Farming and something, but one of these cross-party groups that they have, is going to hold an investigation into the pricing of food, why the inflation has stayed up so high, and whether there is a disconnect between the suppliers, manufacturers, and the retailers, basically to see if someone's profiteering. Funnily enough, there was also another headline today that says that the price of food is now starting to come down. And the section that they looked at was butter, bread, and milk. And seemingly, all of them have come down about 10 pence each in all the major supermarkets. Coincidence, you think? Just when there's a cross-party investigation going on? Yeah. I'm thinking coincidence, possibly not. So hopefully, even if nothing else, any prices that are coming down in the food shopping is going to be good for us. It's going to be beneficial. We can but hope that some more foodstuffs start coming down because, excuse me, the fact that it's bread, milk and butter, which were some of the ones that went up highest, it's headline grabbing. That's the way I see it. So I wouldn't hold my breath for food prices to reduce very much, but certainly there will be headlines, obviously. The other thing that I saw over the last couple of days was that landlords in the UK, there's a lot of landlords are getting out of the business because of the way taxes are going, because of the support for tenants. I think, was it the no-fault evictions, which basically was what landlords used to sell their property so that they could sell it without a tenant. It was like, right, okay, I want to sell the house, off you trot. Tenants left having to look for somewhere else. Landlord gets the property. Now, whether he's going to sell it or whether he's just going to rent it out, but it was one way of getting rid of someone that was at £600 a month and suddenly the rent increases to £1,200 a month. So that was one way of doing that, or if they just wanted to sell it because, I think, is it capital gains tax or something? Excuse me. Sorry about clearing the throat. There is a lot of oilseed rape in full flower just along the road, and it affects Kathleen really badly, but this is me. I've got the back door open, which was obviously a mistake. So apologies for the clearing of the throat. But yeah, the housing is becoming quite a big problem here. And one of the questions on the headlines was these NIMBY neighbours, the not in my backyard. So, I don't want a new housing development in my backyard. And what they're saying is, well, I hope you're prepared for your adult children to live with you forever because we have to build more housing. So yeah, that's quite a thing starting to come in Britain. I also read an article about a mobile home landlord in the States. Now, I'm not sure what his name was or whatever, but they called him like the grave dancer or the grave something. And he owns many, many mobile homes in the States. And people move there, especially seniors, thinking, right, I've got all the facilities here. There's a clubhouse, there's a pool, there's this, I'll buy my own home, my own mobile home. All I need to do is pay the land rent. But seemingly Mr. Landlord has stopped maintaining the places as much. He's trying to evict people because obviously seniors are on a very fixed income. Again, he's looking for more money. And this is seemingly quite a big thing. So there seems to be a lot of us who are struggling to find somewhere to live. Whether it's if you're a senior and you've been living somewhere renting and then you're onto pension income, which is certainly in the UK is negligible, and your landlord's like, well, you still have to pay the rent. And if you can't, you're going to be looking for somewhere. With the market where it is, if you're on a low income, you're really going to struggle. But also landlords, because of the way they're getting taxed, they're wanting to sell up now. Granted, that might give people a bit of a help if they're selling off flats or that, but if it's a house of multiple occupancy, an HMO, that's a lot of money to buy that, and there's a lot of tax involved. So a lot of people are trying to get out of that industry. So housing, I think, is going to be a problem for quite some time. And unless the governments do something about planning or do something about social housing, it's going to be many, many years before that gets sorted. However, the other side of that, there was a report today about the Pope bemoaning the lack of the drop in birth rate in Italy. And seemingly, somebody had come up to him and said, oh, would you bless my baby? He said, and it was a dog. There's children starving and you're asking me to bless a dog. But that made him think. And seemingly in Italy, the birth rate has dropped. I mean, it's dropped in many, many developed countries. Basically because years ago, a family could live on the man's wage. When it was 2.4 kids, married couple, a family could live on the man's wage. That man's wage could keep his wife and his 2 kids. Then it got a bit more difficult. Then it got that both of them were working. And don't get me wrong, when I was younger, when Kathleen was younger, 20 odd years ago, I could keep us both on one wage. I would hate to be a single parent now because I would struggle. Childcare costs especially are a big problem. Childcare access is a big problem. Seemingly in Italy, there just isn't the childcare access, there isn't the jobs. A lot of women are either fired when they get pregnant, or there's all sorts of things, they can't find childcare or whatever, so the birth rate has dropped. And I know that's happening here in the UK as well. So maybe the big plan is that if they just wait long enough, the birth rate will have dropped and all us oldies will have died off. Is that what they're waiting on? Who knows? And finally, my last thing, obviously, as you know, Patrick lived in London up until recently. And we've been together about 10 years. And I used to go down and visit him in London. He would come up here. And the changes I saw in London were phenomenal. And one of the worst was the congestion zone. That was bad enough. But then the ULEZ as well. And trying to get from Patrick's home to the train station in the centre, there was only very specific roads we could go on or we would be charged. And this ULEZ is now coming up to Scotland. I know there's a lot of places in England have got it as well. But in London, there seems to be a bit of a problem with the ULEZ cameras. They seem to have faults, develop faults quite regularly, or sometimes actually disappear. The camera fairy comes and takes them away, it would seem. Seemingly police are going to be more proactive about guarding these ULEZ cameras. But I had a bit of a thought, and especially over the last few years, there's been a whole thing where councils, local authorities, have outsourced their tree management to secondary companies. Instead of doing it themselves, they outsource it to a secondary company, and it's like, you need to look after these 3,000 trees. And they're like, yep, no bother. So they quote, and they quote low, and the council goes, oh great, you're going to look after 3,000 trees for this price, that's fabulous. 6 months into the contract, oh look, there's 1,000 trees need to be felled because they're not safe. Really? No, it's just because they take a bit of work. And we have lost so many trees. And ULEZ is supposed to be reducing emissions. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't I learn somewhere that trees clean the air? And what we've done is we've chopped down all these trees, and then all of a sudden the emissions have gone up, and we're like, oh, you need to stop driving. Now, add on to that the heat that is now happening. I mean, if you go up my local town, up the high street, there isn't a tree to give you shade in the whole street. London, where I saw, I mean, there was places where it used to be beautiful trees. There's stubs waiting to get removed. So, of course, the temperature goes up and they're all like, oh, it's emissions. Well, no, it's a lot of that is because you removed so many trees. So, yeah, that's my thing for today. There was a whole lot of stuff. So I just thought I would come on and tell you, you know, what I'm thinking. Fingers crossed the house price, the food prices do come down, because that would make our lives an awful lot easier. And yeah, now I am going to go and make myself some dinner and have a Friday night relaxing. Catch you later.